human beings are interesting creatures because we may fall multiple times, but we keep getting up, cleaning our face and our tears, and keep fighting. And that's exactly what you did. But you had a pretty interesting story that touched me. I mean, you had an overdose, not once, not twice, but three times in the same night, and almost die. You fought out of death, you cheated death, you stand it up, you clean up your tears, you got sober, and you're here today telling your story. How did Marc Mero do it? Did it? I mean, there are so many
Oh,
people struggling with drugs that they just can't find a way out.
well, first of all, let me correct you on one thing. It wasn't three overdoses in one night. This was three drug overdoses where I almost died on three different
Okay.
occasions.
Oh wow. Okay.
But just to get the record straight, and you know, I just remember getting to a point in my life. For those that don't know my story, I lost my little brother and sister. They both died at 21. My mom died at 58. My dad died while I was holding my arms, losing tons of friends, and even in the wrestling industry. I lived a very tough life. I grew up on the west side of Buffalo, New York, gang infested, drug infested neighborhood. So I had a kind of the deck stacked against me as a kid, single family home, mom working two jobs, you know, the typical story. And I've always been a fighter, man. I just kept coming back. But the drugs were the one thing that really took me down. I mean, really affected my life, becoming a drug addict. And my drug of choice was cocaine back then. It was like just doing drugs all the time and then using things that fall asleep or wake up, and you're just killing yourself. And then for me, my change in my life was actually one day getting down on my knees, man, asking God into my life, and it has been forever changed. You know, it's funny. I haven't touched a drug since 2003. So when you're talking 18 years without touching a drug and never going to rehab, not that I don't respect and admire people that go to rehab and can get themselves clean, but mine was a little different. It was a spiritual awakening in my life. And I've been ever so blessed. And then now sharing my story and helping these young people today all over I average about 230 events a year for the last 14 years, up until the pandemic came. This is the first year that obviously we can't go to schools, churches, or corporations because of the pandemic, but we hope to get back on the road next year, just like we have been all these years. But there's just no greater joy, man, than helping another person, and especially people that write to you and tell you you changed or saved their life. It's the greatest joy.
And how the being in a wrestling environment made that drug situation and that situation and with your life as a general more complicated. It being in the wrestling industry made you more down than you were supposed to be.
Well, my drugs really took off when I was with WCW. When I came over to the WWF or WWE, when I came with my wife, we stayed clean, and it wasn't until after wrestling ended with WWF that I got back into drugs, and my wife and I got divorced, and I went really off the deep end, and that's when I almost died. You know, I would just and felt suicidal, felt the depression, the anxiety, all the things that I talk about, or people that go through that can relate to my story, and said, man, I know exactly how that guy feels. And that's the blessing, because knowing what I went through and how I felt and how depressed I got and how I just didn't want to be here anymore, and then getting destroyed financially and everything else. It's like, man, you gotta have a setback to have a comeback, you know. And that was a setback, and then making a comeback and then getting it all back, you know, making a new life for yourself, and one that, oh, I don't know. When I look back on my life, I'm taking my last breath. I think the thing I'm gonna remember the most is these presentations where I was able to help other people.
If you allow me, I want to say something in Spanish for a Spanish speaking audience, even though this is going to have at one point some inserts of me translating all this. But a todos los amigos pueden seguir a Marc Mero directamente en todas sus redes sociales. Su canal de YouTube está extremadamente encendido. Ahí tienen muchos mensajes positivos. Simplemente vayan a youtube.com/themarcmero, youtube.com/themarcmero. Instagram lo pueden conseguir como @marcmero, al igual que Twitter e Instagram @marcmero. De igual manera pueden conseguirlo en Facebook como Marc Mero Page, Facebook como Marc Mero Page. De igual manera pueden conseguirlo en su website thinkpoz.org, 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 y ahí pueden conseguirlo. De igual manera en su correo electrónico a todos los que estén interesados en algún servicio de este motivational speaker que ha pasado por todo en la vida y se ha levantado y puede ayudarte a ti a encaminarte en el camino correcto. Simplemente tienen que contactarlo a través de info@thinkpoz.org, info@thinkpoz.org, y ahí pueden, sea para escuelas, sea para universidades, para diferentes tipos de seminarios. Este es el caballero que ustedes necesitan brindándole esa dirección en la vida, porque él estuvo ahí y logró levantarse. So after that, I wanted to ask, how did this thinkpause.org project started? I mean, when did you decide it was time to tell your story, to inspire others to change their lives?
Well, again, it was something that kind of just fell in my lap. What happened was a football coach from one of the high schools asked me if I would come and talk to football players about not doing drugs. And I said, sure. So I talked to 60 players. And then it was funny because I started getting some emails from the players on how the presentation really inspired them. I remember how good that felt, you know? But unbeknownst to me, they called another school, and that school asked me if I would come and speak to the whole school. And I said, sure. But I realized that, you know, when you're talking to young people, you have to captivate them. And I did that, obviously come from the wrestling industry. You go, you know, let me make it bigger than life, man. So as I'm talking, I'm showing videos and pictures behind me of my life story, of the people I met, the places I've gone, superstars, movie stars, athletes that I've met, and they're flashing behind me, and then shows my apartment where I grew up as a little kid. So it captivates people, and they feel like they know me, or they feel like they can relate to my story.
Marc, why did you decide to retire from the pro wrestling industry? When was the moment you decided, okay, this is my time?
Well, I mean, obviously being up in age at 46, my last match, but you know, I seen that gosh darn Diamond Dallas Page come back at like 60 years old. You know, he lives by me here in Florida. We're good friends. We do the DDPY yoga together, and we're very close. We're very competitive. Okay, not only I won Rookie of the Year at 31, he won it at 35. He keeps topping me. I was most improved player, wrestler, and he does it too. And now he goes out and wrestles at 60 years old. Now, I just turned, he's 60, he's 64 now. He did it when he was 63. I'm turning 61 in 4 months. So I might even wait till I'm 65 to do it, to top him now, okay?
And how do your relationship with Diamond Dallas Page helps you, you know, feeling that fire inside your heart? I mean, we've seen the pictures practicing the DDP yoga, but as you mentioned, both of you are very competitive together. How's your relationship with DDP?
we're best of friends. I mean, he's one of my closest friends. We inspire each other. You know, iron sharpens iron, the Bible says, and we are two people that just bring each other up, man. I mean, it's funny when we're together, you know, it's like we're just like almost like just keep lifting each other on different things, different projects that we're working on. You know, he encourages me. I certainly encourage him. A lot of people don't know this though, but the famous video that I did about my mother, a lot of times when I would come to Atlanta, I would stay with DDP when I was touring before I moved here. And so when I was doing a bunch of schools in the Atlanta area, and he said to me, one of the schools I was doing was closer to his home. And he said, you know, he's got a whole film crew there because of DDP yoga. And he said, do you mind if the guys come down and film your presentation at the school? I said, sure, why not? So they came and filmed it. And about a week later, he calls me up. He goes, hey, bro, the guys put together this 5-minute video. Do you mind if we put it on YouTube? And I said, sure, go ahead. Never thinking much about it. He goes, and he made a joke. He goes, you never know, it might go viral. Go, you know, who'd ever think that 500 million people would see this video? You know, it's absolutely crazy how it took off and how it's affected so many people, because I share from my heart about my mother, and everyone's got a mom, you know, and some, you know, a mom and a son are so close. And so a lot of guys can relate to having a mom that raised them and worked hard in their life to give them the best life possible. So it touches a lot of hearts and changes a lot of lives.